Welcome. It's just gone 7:25 Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday the 14th of December, and you are watching Regional Wrap, episode 71. Regional Wrap, providing an insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, The Desolation of Renewables, is my guest, Caroline Ems, spokesperson for the Stock Chilumben Wind Farm Community Group. Caroline's passionate about the natural environment and has been involved in a campaign to stop the industrial scale clearing since 2018 to protect the most vulnerable native fauna from extinction. The current fast tracking of widespread renewable energy projects across our vast eco landscapes threatens to take the extinction crisis to a next level. Caroline and her husband Phil have been involved with the revegetation project since 1990 and have supported many conservation foundations by assisting with the purchase of over 400,000 hectares of land of high conservation value. Beneficiaries have included the Camden Sound Sanctuary for humpback whales in the Kimberley region of West Australia, the Piccaninny Plains Wildlife Sanctuary in northern Queensland, and numerous others. Also joining us later on this episode will be Raf Champion and Bill Stinson from the Energy Realist Group to provide some context as to the scale of renewable projects required throughout Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria to replace all base load assets, and the required coordination of communities which have or will be adversely impacted by these projects. Firstly, welcome, Caroline.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
Well, you've had a bit of an interesting time in the conservation field, but this was not your first stay in life. You were actually quite a successful businesswoman along with your husband. So can you give us a bit of background on yourself, where you originate from, your original sort of work history, and then your flow into the conservation area?
Well, we originally were dairy farmers from the Western District in Victoria. So originally we farmed at the Hawkstar. We had dairy, and then we moved over to Warrnambool in a little place, farming village called Allensford. So we used to operate about 400 acres of very good quality dairy country. And then we went through Ash Wednesday fires, and we helped a lot of people try and recover from the most devastating fires that I thought we could ever go through. And that was in around about 1984. We decided after this that we'd get out of dairying. So we ended up, we'd moved to Queensland, but now, and we've always had a passion for land care, and I mean true land care, you know, where you actually care for the land, the wildlife on it, you plant trees according to the district, and you share the land with wildlife, you farm, you don't rape it, you don't overstock. So we've been very, very passionate always about land care, riparian forest, you know, just taking care of the land, I guess. So we do operate about 1,500 acres of beef, and we've revegetated a lot of forests. But prior to that, when we were involved in business, we did operate a licensing system around Australia and New Zealand. And so we've got a healthy respect for manufacturing, small business, and people being able to run a business according. I mean, obviously, we've lost a lot of our manufacturing, I do believe, in Australia. And I think manufacturing industry in the right place. We've always said that, and we're very heavily involved with other conservation groups. And I think that renewable industry on such a vast scale and these vast rollouts, and when we're talking about global equity funds and these global sellouts, in a sense, of our beautiful landscapes, we're talking about vast landscapes of the Great Dividing Range that are threatened. The Great Dividing Range, remember, is part of it sets our microclimates for every industry that you could ever imagine. So we're looking at the vast landscapes of Queensland and even the Great Dividing Range all the way down to Victoria that could be threatened with the rollout, the fast rollouts of renewable energy. It's an enormous footprint, and we've come a full circle from believing, and we were in that space of thinking, oh, renewable energy, this is the way to go. I mean, and very quickly we realised when we saw the destruction in our own backyard and seeing the suffering of the people, the community, of our life, we thought, this has got a much higher footprint than we thought. We thought this isn't the way to go. Australia's going down the wrong path if we think that this industry is going to save us. It's not. And so we've gone through a full turnaround circle. Yeah.
Just before we move on, I'd just like to touch on about your 1,500 hectares of cattle. Whereabouts is that located, and what sort of cattle, and what's your production figures like?
Well, it's very good because we're in North Queensland. It's near Lake Barine. We've done a lot of revegetation works. The cattle are actually Brahman. It's good cattle country as well, but it's also very high biodiversity, probably some of the most highest biodiversity in Australia. So my husband and I, we operate this, but we also work very closely with community groups, with conservation groups, and also other farmers and small business. So we're a very, very close communities where farmers, landowners have in the past, I hope, have been supportive of other farmers. I mean, this is much more preferable to support farming communities and regional areas than partnering, say, with industry, global industry, which is hurting us, which is hurting regional areas with such high biodiversity. We really, so this is what we're finding. We've previously, landowners were sought after that did the right thing, that actually fenced off their cattle, that looked after their rivers, that contributed, didn't overstock, things like that. Beef, cattle, you can make it work for the community in the best interest, in the public interest, or there's good farmers, and then there's the large scale industrial farmer. And it's good to know the difference. It really is. There are the land carers and there is the industrial farmer, and there's a very big difference. Yeah. Just
touching on you going full circle, I think there's a reasonable size of the community in Cairns particularly, and the tablelands. I think Windy Hill was the first experimental wind farm, and then came Mount Emerald. And yes, basically there was a lot of sort of euphoria and no, this is the way of the future. But I think, and people thought, well, we've done our bit. We've put in Mount Emerald's gone in. There's turbines up there producing renewable electricity, but then all of a sudden, Kaban comes along, and now Chulumban comes along, and so, like I say, there's a realisation by a lot of people who, I'll call them conservationists versus environmentalists. Conservationists have sort of taken an alarm at this situation, whereas some of the environmentalists, and especially the ones who live in Machan's Beach and things like that, they're sort of not being very supportive of your concerns. And do you find that a little bit alarming in regards to this fracturing of people in supposedly the environmental space?
Well, in actual fact, we've got a huge amount of support now in our region as people now realise this is destroying our entire ecosystems, our mountains. So I think in North Queensland, we're not getting much opposition at all from anywhere because it's just so bad. It's in your face. I think where there is people that are not informed are people really in the cities. And it's very hard to get media to take up our stories. Like ABC ran our articles twice, but it would be, I mean, when we look at Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, those areas, I think if they knew that whole ecosystems were going to be totally desecrated, I don't think they would want this. Do they know? No, they don't even know this is happening to us. Whereas in North Queensland, I must admit, the Cairns Post do not run our articles anymore, which is really sad. That's but I believe the Australian is going to be running with us, which is great. And Sky News have also interviewed a couple of us, which is great. Yeah.
I think Cairns Post prints an awful lot of letters in regards to people spruiking the greatness and the advantages of renewables. And I mean, I've tried to reply to a couple of those letters, but I don't get a Guernsey. But just moving on, I have interviewed in the past month or so Leela Verben, who's down near Mackay, where they're going to put in the pumped hydro. I've also spoken to people who are in opposition to the HumeLink transmission line. So there's a growing number of groups and arising as these projects come to the notice and start impacting on communities. So at this time, I'd like to bring Ralph Champion in on the conversation to give us a bit of an overview of the scale of renewables that are going to be needed across the whole eastern seaboard to replace our base load power. Because I don't think the average person has got any sort of concept of how many projects will need to come online and the amount of hardware that will have to be installed and how much land will have to be occupied by these projects. So welcome, Ralph.
Yeah, thanks, Bill, and welcome, Caroline.
Thank you.
Just a point of contact, Caroline. I grew up on a dairy farm in Tasmania. We had a herd of pedigree Jersey cows. But the dairy farming life, once you've seen the lives of the city, it's hard to go back to the farm. So I'm a city boy for a long time now. Okay, now several points to be made about the scale and impact of renewable energy. Where to start? Crikey. One place to start is Bill Stinson's survey of the environmental footprint of wind and solar from the A to Z, where the A is the exploration, mining and invasion of wilderness areas in third world countries, to get out the gigantic amount of minerals that are going to be required to even try to attempt this transition to green energy, so-called. So that's, and I really want to urge you local protesters to, well, this is our business. We have to point out that this is not just a not in my backyard thing. It's not just people who want to defy progress and selfishly sit on their patch and not anyone else benefit. This environmental impact of wind and solar is worldwide. It's devastating. It's catastrophic. You can see it when it's in front of you, but you need to be told about what it's doing overseas. So there's plenty of scope to make more good films, short films and videos to get to city audiences. The second point to make about the whole renewable energy, so-called renewable energy transition, it absolutely isn't going to work. It's not going to work. Can't possibly work. It can't work because of wind droughts. Wind droughts are when you have next to no wind across the whole of southeast Australia. They happen, they can last for 2 or 3 days. Not like the weeks of wind drought they get in Europe, but they're enough to completely destroy any chance of a transition from coal and gas. The rate of exit from coal and gas, it's not driven by the high points of penetration of wind and solar to get on sunny Sunday afternoons. It's limited by the lowest level of wind and solar that you get on nights of wind drought or next to no wind. Now, farmers know that if you have a fence around the sheep or cows, if there's a gap in the fence, it doesn't matter how high the fence is, it doesn't work as a fence. Well, with wind and solar, if you have gaps in the supply, it doesn't work. And it's only this has been hidden up to date because we've only just got to the point where it actually matters whether we get any wind or solar power. We've had heaps of conventional power up to the closure of the big one in Victoria in 2017.
Was that Hazelwood?
Hazelwood. Now, it got a bit difficult after that, and AEMO warned us that we were travelling without any reserves. Well, we squeaked along thus far by heroically load shedding during peak periods of demand in summer and winter. It's hidden from sight because they just had big users to dial their consumption back a bit. But that's not going to work after Liddell finishes closing. They'll only get through with load shedding after that by blacking out suburbs and districts. So we've got as far as we can go on the exit from coal, and we can't get any further without catastrophe. And this just means that the whole business of letting intermittent energy into the grid and subsidising it and mandating it, this is, to my mind, unquestionably the biggest public policy failure in the history of the nation. What compares? If we come back to
if we could come back to Caroline for a sec. I suppose when you first saw the scale of Emerald Farm and the fact that it was on land that had already been used for farming and things like that, the impact wasn't so much. But with Kaban, when that first started, there was a general realisation that these wind farms were now going to enter into conservation areas of importance. And while Kaban wasn't too bad in regards to it's only 28 turbines, would you say the alarm bells were already there? But when Chilumban actually popped its head up, that's when everything sort of went a bit off the scale.
Well, for us, Emerald Heights was actually pristine habitat. And at the time, green groups thought, okay, well, we're doing the right thing. And after they came back, I wasn't involved in the Emerald Heights wind farm. And I don't call them farms anymore. But when Stephen came back to Emerald and saw the damage, he was really shocked, really, really surprised how much of a huge footprint it had on that landscape. So then the problem with Caban is we didn't even know about it. There was no public consultation. The community didn't know. And this is, there were no checks and balances. It just got a tick and a flick. And Caban is the highest, one of the highest conservation values of global significance, of national significance. We're looking at greater gliders, the capital possums of the world. We're looking at the most beautiful wet sclerophyll forests. And it was also a pastoral lease. In other words, these pastoral leases was just a cattle farm, and the farmer that I met, actually, he lost the use of that farm. And this is the problem. I mean, cattle farms, a pastoral lease has some of the highest biodiversity in our country. And a lot of people underestimate it. They think, oh, it's only a cattle farm, so therefore it doesn't matter. And that's what the developer states, oh, well, it's just a cattle farm. But in actual fact, it's of extremely high conservation biodiversity, and it did have a use for cattle as well. In other words, there's a lot of misconception. There's a lot of global corporations language that is used against regional areas. It's really shocking that Melbourne and Sydney, if we go into the cities, therein lies people that are disconnected from the land. They're disconnected, unfortunately, from nature, and they've got this euphoric view, unfortunately, you know, that this is going to save the planet. It's actually going to wreck the planet big time. And then nobody's dealing with, we've actually got the evidence, I think I've sent it to you, of the turbines that have just been dumped in Ravenshoe. And there are no answers to this. It's going to be tomorrow's.
We lost your video. We've lost your audio, Carolyn.
For wind subsidies. So there's a huge amount at stake. The issues are so huge, from the low ground pollution, waste, footprint, and then let's talk about the size of the wind blades now. We're looking at Chilumban. The wind blades are 90 metres long. That's 180 metres diameter. That's just going to take everything out in the sky that flies through those areas. I'm talking about everything. Every bird, every bat, koalas, they won't be able to hear themselves grunt. And then you've got the whole region's tourism. It's just an enormous footprint, and it's an enormous, it's going to have an enormous detriment to our regions in Northern Australia, but also when you look at tourism and people that live here, people that come to visit, small business, farming, it's also our climate. Like, it's going to, it doesn't, like, to us, if anyone wants to stop climate change, they're not going to do it. They're going to make it 1,000 times worse. If their objective is climate action, well, then they would have called it out, wouldn't they? Or we'll stop land clearing then. Do you know what I mean?
Just on the land clearing part, I just bring Raf back in. I think Cholumban's got going to have 95 turbines. The access roads are up to 70 metres wide. So there's kilometres and kilometres of access road, and then the pads are fairly big for these turbines as well. I'm not familiar, because it's not built yet, I haven't got any sort of picture of its scale, but the biggest current wind turbine installation is Cooper's Gap. Cooper's Gap is 123 turbines, 450 odd megawatts nameplate capacity, which sounds a lot, but when you can only rate it at about a 30%. It's only reliable for about 130, 140 megawatts, and it covers an area of 102 square kilometres. So coming back to you, Raph, in the scale of replacing, well, we need about 32 gigawatts of baseload power on the whole East Coast. What sort of numbers of Cooper's Gaps or Cholumban's are we looking at to get this magical figure of baseload renewable with batteries?
Well, there's too many absurd assumptions in there. We tell people to stop talking about batteries as grid-style storage for a start. They just aren't. But I'm just casting about for things where places to go. Sorry, okay, let's start with what you asked, the question you asked me. Okay, well, the answer is I think they're talking about something like 9 times as much installed capacity of wind and solar. I mean, can you even envisage twice as much when you look at the landscape? Can you envisage twice as much before you start thinking about 9 times as much? But we get back to the fact of the matter is it is not going to help. When you have wind droughts, when we know we're going to have wind droughts, no amount of additional installed capacity will help. No amount. It's just too stupid. So what we have to do, we've got to find allies and partners to help us, and we've got to reach out for anybody with their same interests. And I'm thinking of the coal mining communities. Like we have to keep the coal fires burning. So otherwise the lights will go out. So we've got to reach out and help mining, back the miners. We've got to get to the tourist industry. Now, they're all in, well, most their headquarters are all in the city. So get to head HQ of tourism and show them the films of what's happening in the bush. Tell them about the businesses, the B&Bs and all the things that depend on the tourist industry for a living, employment. Reach out to genuine conservationists. Like I know Bill's contacted the official conservationist groups, but they've all been totally sold out and captured by saving the planet the other way about. But we've got to reach the rank and file, ordinary people who care about conservation and get the message to them. So we've got to do screenings of the planet of the humans that Bill knows about. And we've got to get local groups active across the country with spreading the films of the destruction, the planet of the humans. Here's the other one. And the other thing which you started to touch on is the waste, the rubbish, the leftovers when all this is finished. We're just starting to see the end of the first generation of wind farms in Australia. And unfortunately, they're mostly small and they weren't very big. So they were not wind farms, they're bird killing factories. But we have to try to explain the bulk of waste which is going to emerge year by year as the bigger, more recent windmills start coming down, not to mention all the toxic rubbish in solar panels. So we've got to get out to all these other groups that might be able to help us and explain what's going on, to push against all of those financial vested interests that have got making money out of destroying the planet. in a useless attempt that won't keep the lights on even.
But I suppose the real problem is we've got politicians, and they seem to be on both sides of the fence, who are just pig-headed or just ignorant, that they don't want to know about the future problems or the shortcomings of renewable. They just say it's going to happen. And that's what we've got to really deal with. It is coming.
At this point, we introduced the concept of the National Information Network. And the point of this network is to have cells of people, even as few as one person, in every electorate across the country, starting off with the House of Reps, 151 seats. The politicians won't move until their local electorate tells them to. So these groups have got to lift the awareness of the community about this problem, lift the level of awareness, and get people fronting up to the ministers and saying, what's going on here? We're going the wrong way. They can ignore a few people. Like we went to a politician in a Sydney suburb, and she said, well, hang on, you guys have got to be more active. I get deputations of Greens every week, and this is the first time in 12 months I've seen you guys. So, you know, we've got to get these cells active in the community, building up activists who'll go in and talk to their politicians, write to them and push them.
Maybe we can bring back Caroline here. You have had a fair bit of assistance from Stephen and getting videos done and things like that. So how is your community-based information system sort of developing?
Well, we're writing to the green groups and letting them know, particularly ACF and all of them, that this is what's happening. And we're now looking at the universities funded by, you know, these global corporations. It's called circular economy. And in every university, I think they should be all put on notice or advised, and this is what our barrister is starting to state, that certain people need to be advised this is what's happening. The destruction of the land, of the landscapes, of the biodiversity is not going to save the planet, and it's not going to provide baseload power. It's actually just it's not going to work, nor for the economy. So we're starting to draft up letters. We deal with conservation groups, and I mean, there needs to be a realisation, all right, there's coal, they've made it, the problem for us is the transition. There has been no transition. It's just fast track destruction. And this is no transition, is it?
No, they can't lose any more coal power without disaster. It's as simple as that. And some of them realise it, but they haven't said it out loud yet.
And the problem is they're not even prepared to talk about nuclear, which okay, if nuclear, and there are so many lies and misconceptions about nuclear, and we're just trying to educate, and that's why on our webpage we're the only conservation group that's actually put nuclear on our page. Yeah, we're the only ones.
The other thing is too, you've also got Steve making those drone videos and that. How are you disseminating them fairly regularly? Okay, you're taking every opportunity to sort of send out an email with those videos attached to, that Steve's made, yes. And get them out to the different politicians and different groups, because I think that's got to be an important part of the whole program.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the other part is there also needs to be this coordination with other people, like your group needs to be talking to Leela Verbin's group down where the pump hydro is. You got some of the very same sort of problems with the ecosystem and the damage that's going to be done. And it needs to be like some sort of big coalition formed. And maybe this is where we can bring Bill into the conversation in regards to trying to get some broad coalition of all these community groups that are going to be impacted, or already been impacted, or there's actually been a projects announced that's got an impact on them. So welcome, Bill.
Thanks, Bill, and good evening, Carolyn.
Hello, Bill. Good to meet you.
What we've done is we've started to reach out to communities across New South Wales, Victoria, and also to Carolyn. We've got what we call our National Information Network. And as Rafe said, what we're trying to do is to bring these people together to exchange information and to see how each of these groups can defend their backyard. You know, there's communities that are being destroyed by solar farms and wind farms. And when you look at solar farms, they're taking over prime agricultural land to roll these solar farms out. Now, these things are only short-term installations. Now, we talk about 20 years. And getting back to the point that Carolyn was making about nuclear and coal, our coal-fired power stations have operated for 60 years. Some of the nuclear power stations across the world have operated for 70 years. So to not use our uranium, our coal and gas is suicidal, because in Australia, if we use our uranium, our coal and gas, we have energy independence. If we go to solar farms, wind turbines and batteries, then we're ceding our energy security to a foreign power. And this is just absolutely ridiculous. Now, getting back to the point about the area that's covered for these solar farms and for wind farms. If you have a 1,000 megawatt nuclear, small nuclear reactor power station that covers 18 hectares, 1,000 megawatts of solar panels covers 27 square kilometres. 1,000 megawatts of wind turbines covers 200 square kilometres. So to replace our energy network in Australia, we'd virtually have to cover the whole of Queensland, the whole of New South Wales and the whole of Victoria with solar panels and wind farms and batteries, and they most probably wouldn't work. Now, as Rafe mentioned before, I wrote a paper, I put together a compilation paper about 12 months ago. It was called The Dark Side of Renewable Energy. And what I wanted to understand is the various phases of how these solar panels, wind turbines and batteries are produced. Now, there's many papers that have said there's got to be a vast quantity of minerals to be mined to be able to provide for batteries for electric cars, for wind turbines, for solar panels and for these batteries, these backup batteries. So that you're going into areas of biodiversity, areas that have never been mined before. Then you go and you mine them, you have to process the material, you then have to fabricate the material, you have to transport it, you then have to erect it, you operate a wind farm or a solar farm for 20 years, then you've got to come in and demolish it, you've got to rehabilitate the land, and you've got to get rid of the waste. Now, with PV solar panels, there was a paper produced by the University of Technology about 2 years ago. And what they basically said is it's almost impossible to recycle PV solar panels because you have what they call a polymer. So when you crush the glass, this polymer, it's a toxic substance, it's contained within the crushed glass. Now, the only way to get rid of it is by a chemical process. When you have this chemical process, you then introduce a chemical waste stream. So none of this is taken into consideration by some of the idiot politicians we've got. Chris Bowen is certifiable. They should put him in a straitjacket. But getting back to what Carolyn was saying about people in the cities. Now, I'm a city person. My family first settled in Wellington, New South Wales in 1844, and my great-grandfather was forced off the land in the Federation drought just before 1900. So we've been down here in Sydney. There are politicians that we're very close to, and they are listening to us. One of the things that Rafe talked about. Liddell Power Station, AGL, who owns Liddell Power Station, have put in an application to demolish it in April of next year. Now, the minister who has to sign off on that demolition application is a guy named Anthony Roberts. He's the Minister for Planning and Homes in New South Wales, and he is the guy who signs off the application. We're speaking to Anthony Roberts and we're saying, look, there's got to be a moratorium put on this. We can't be demolishing our coal-fired power stations, because what these people do, these people with all the money, as Caroline says, is they blow the power stations up. Now, if they'd done that in Germany, then they would have a much bigger problem than they've got now. What they did over there was they mothballed their coal-fired power stations. Now, also with small modular reactors, there are processes where they're now looking at repurposing coal infrastructure. So what they do is when the coal-fired boilers come to end of life, they replace them with small modular reactors, and they produce the steam to drive the generators. So you've got the infrastructure there, you've got the transmission there. You don't have to roll out 28,000 kilometres of transmission to try and connect all these solar panels and wind turbines up. Now, just finally, I'll say this. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m, the Menzies Research Institute is putting on a Zoom meeting and has asked for communities from around the country to call in. Some people will be speaking at it, and it's about the devastation to country communities caused by renewables. Now, we're starting to push this. We're getting these communities. We're giving people hope, and that's the important thing, that we can turn this around. We're speaking for Australia's unique flora because they can't speak for themselves.
Bill, can you send us a link to that Zoomcast? So maybe Carolyn would be interested in joining that Zoomcast tomorrow night, or some people should.
Yeah, what's your email address, Bill?
Bill.Bates.
You
should have it anyway, because I've sent you an email today.
Okay, I'll send you the
link.
Menzies Research Centre's announcement about it.
Just as we're going to move back to Caroline, I know your first concern at the moment is Chilumban and Kaban, but you do see the future problem in regards to, as if this movement keeps going forward, there's a lot of areas that are going to start having to be exploited for minerals. So a lot of the area on in the Cape has deposits of some of these rare earths, and that's going to put another problem on our doorstep in regards to environmental damage for this mineral extraction. And one of the problems with the mineral extractions for things like rare metals is there's an awful lot of overburden actually to get the ore out that you want. So, and it's somewhere in the vicinity, anywhere between 20 and 100 times more than extracting coal. A coal field, you just take the topsoil away, you can put it aside somewhere and use it for generation. But this mining for some of these rare earths is huge in regards to the overburden, and then there has to be some on-site processing to at least get the ore body down to a respectable, manageable amount of material that you can send to, say, Townsville or somewhere else, or ship it off overseas to be processed. So I think, are you becoming aware of any groups that are starting to be concerned around that part of the ventures in the near future, the mineral exploration and extraction for these facilities?
Absolutely. In Northern Australia, for the lithium mining, I mean, they're just going in there, signing off ILUA agreements with Aboriginal corporations, but they're not consulting with everybody. And of course, the footprint, I don't know if anyone's read Simon Michaud's, a great professor who's virtually said with what they want for renewable energy, you'd need 2 planets.
Yeah.
Your microphone's dropped out, Caroline.
Yes, can you hear me? So we would need 2 planets, basically, for what is required. If you look at Chulumban, for instance, for what is required for renewable energy, Chulumban's only 1.2% of what's actually required. So you only have to do your maths, a little bit of maths, to work out, heavens above. This is just an enormous footprint, just enormous. We'll need 2 planets for it. It's just going to destroy the Earth. And it's not going to do our economy any good. Nothing. There's no good of it. No good to come of it.
Hey, Bill, just on Chulumban, I've done a rough cost study of what they would have to recover per megawatt hour to pay for the project. This is not what they need to sell it for. It's what they recover for. It's $91 a megawatt. Now, coal-fired power station produces at $53 a megawatt. So straight away, you've got $91 a megawatt, which goes for 25 years. And then they've got to demolish it. One of the things with these wind farms and solar farms, when you get a mining license, the licensee has to pay a rehabilitation bond up front. But wind farms and solar farms don't. So you can have a $2 company, it goes broke, and then who's going to demolish the wind farms and the solar farms?
Yes.
I think we've already seen that situation in the United States, where there's been numerous decommissioned wind farms that are still standing, and basically it's fallen actually onto the local government level actually to dismantle them. And what they've got to do, because it's so expensive, they're actually got to appeal to both the state and the federal governments for funds to get rid of the waste. But that's another thing here with Australian projects. It seems that a number of times there's a proposition put up by an Australian group or whatever, or that comes up with this project, but then within a short time, it changes hands a couple of times to the ultimate operator. And so you haven't got that ability to go and hit all those people who have been involved. And like you say, if it ends up in the situation where the operator turns out in a changeover somewhere along just to be a $2 company, there's only one person who's going to pick up the tab for the decommissioning, and that's the taxpayer of Australia.
Well, it's not. I'll tell you why. Because a lot of these wind farms and solar farms, they lease. They provide a lease to the landowner. That's so right. If they go broke, it's the landowner who's up for the cost of decommissioning it. If I just make one other point also, in Victoria, we've got this group called Wind Farm, it's Wind Farm Community Living. And one of the councils down there has started arcing up against giving approvals because there's a wind farm built down there and it cost the council $4 million to repair the roads that were destroyed by the construction traffic. Now, these are the other things that aren't included in the costs of the project. What is costing the community and the ratepayers to repair the roads that are destroyed by construction traffic?
I think one of the other problems is there's deals to sort of attract landowners to go into these communities. Sorry, these community-based wind farms as well. So they're another kettle of fish that's got to be looked at.
That's right.
Bottom line is, mate, we've got to do it for Australia. We've got to protect our unique flora and fauna, and we've got to have energy security and energy independence and not rely upon a country where solar panels and wind turbines are built by slave labour.
Yes.
I think also just recently with the experience that's happened in Europe, and we've already seen a number of turbine manufacturers and even battery manufacturers already having financial problems because there's been a bit of a hiccup in the supply chain, the costs and all that, and they're already talking about going offshore. And when you talk about offshore, there's only one offshore place, and that's China. So even these well-established companies like Siemens and Vestas are actually now talking about giving up manufacturing in Europe and handing it over to China. And so that just leaves us all in a very bad situation going into the future if everyone's dependent on the Chinese for delivery of their energy systems.
Well, it's already happened. And see, the interesting thing is that the Europeans in the United Kingdom, they say, yeah, we've done the right thing by our emissions because we've sent them all to China. So in other words, they've closed down their manufacturing industries and they send it to China because China doesn't have to worry about their emissions. Now, interestingly, about 2 days ago, there was a news report from the European Union where there's a group, a science group associated with the European Union, who have said that they want to declare lithium as a toxic substance. So the EV manufacturers are all up in arms because it's going to add costs to the production of these batteries because of the increased safety concerns with it. You know, the whole thing is just a house of cards.
Mm. Mm.
If we come back to you, Caroline, in regards to your group, today you were at a meeting with people and you obviously, every time I talk to you, you're flying off to somewhere to meet with a group or whatever. Exactly how many people are involved with your group and how many organisations are you engaged with at the moment, and how many more people do you actually need to engage with to get your message across?
Well, for us, we've already got probably 1,500 to 2,000 people that are friends, subscribers and friends of ours. But the problem is for us, our communities are under-resourced. And yet these wealthiest people on the planet, they're global corporations. They on-sell, as you were talking about, to private equity groups in Europe, HSBC, Vanguard, BlackRock, Hester Group, superannuation. It's just a really big land grab. And the problem is we've got barristers, we've got a great legal avenue, and we've got sensor webs going up, but everybody's under-resourced. This is the problem. They're exploiting rural areas. So the big thing for us is getting our message into the cities. We've already got conservation groups now in North Queensland that are saying, this isn't working. It's really not a good idea to put these vast ecosystems, destroy them with industry. And we don't call them wind farms anymore. They're industrial wind developments. And it's just it's the city people that are living in four walls. They're thinking that they're doing the right thing. And how do we get that message to them? How can we, like we've been on ABC twice, fantastic to actually be on ABC. Now we're exploring the Australian, we've been on Sky News, but we really need to reach out now to the cities, the Teals, write to them. I think this is our job. We need to write to every single group in Australia to say, this is what's happening. and start putting things on notice, in other words. Yeah.
Carolyn, that's what we are. You know, we're in the cities and we're the ones who are close to the politicians, and we're speaking on your behalf.
That's great.
And this is where we need to get the coordination in regards to people like Caroline, people like Leela Urban down where the pumped hydro is proposed, need to come into a single sort of website and be registered there, and then everything filter out, and then it will become a powerful mechanism to address these. But the thing that I'd love to do is get people like this, what's his name, Pollock, or whatever is the new senator down in Canberra, the former rugby guy.
Pocock.
Well, I'd like to get hold of him.
He's green as grass. His wife's a Conservation Foundation stalwart.
Need to drag him up to places like this and where the bulldozers are going through, and then get him to stand there and then make his case why he's supporting this rubbish.
Getting too many scrums, but getting
sure. I'll tell you the stupidity that we've got. My son's trying to do a redevelopment, knock down, rebuild. There's a tree which is on the boundary on the council's property. It's a eucalyptus from the remnants from a protected forest. Now, there's 93,000 trees being knocked down for this Yalumban, and we're down there stuffing around with one bloody tree. You know, it's just ridiculous. But I agree with Carolyn. This is the sort of thing that we've got to put up with some of these idiots in the city. You can't go and speak to the council now because of COVID.
Caroline, I think you want to send those short films to the Teals. There's not that many of them, only half a dozen, but send them through, speaking from the heart, like that, about where you're at, but keep at them. Not do it every couple of months so they don't forget about it.
Well, every objection I put in, I put those 4 films, attach it to the objection.
That's great. Yeah. That's good. That's what it's for. It's to, and we've now got new footage that has come in. So we're certainly not short of good footage, good photographers, and great conservation photographers that are part of our team.
That's why we've got to educate the people in the city, educate the kids. These are the things that are happening.
Jim, Bill just said it, the kids. We absolutely have to get young people on social media. It's the young people that are most brainwashed by schools, and they don't get anything from the newspaper. They don't read books. They don't listen to what adults say. We've got to get young people to speak. And there's a guy up in Gold Coast, our colleague Neil Killian, and he's going to form a nationwide coalition of climate and energy groups, an umbrella group to provide a framework for all these other groups to have a reference, like a central website, linkages. They'll all be independent. There's no instructions. There's no board of management, but it's a framework that covers all of these climate and energy issues, all of these groups, and they'll all be a part of our national information network. And again, it comes back to the cells active in every federal electorate, beavering away with every local outlet you've got, your local newspaper, your notice boards, community groups, anything. We just need more people and good stuff like those films. Those are killers. And also there's our information pack we put out from the energy realists. Like there's 2 Mark Mills videos, there's your films, there's a few other things, but it's a package that tells people basically all that they need to know about what's wrong with the enterprise, why it won't work. It's got Bill's paper in it. We can't flood people with stuff because they're too busy. You've got to have concise nuggets of stuff, but we've got to keep sending it out continuously because they don't take any notice the first time or they forget. So we've got the wind behind us because people from now on are going to be very concerned about their power and we can talk to them about something that they care about with language and pictures they can understand. And this is so different from the climate debate, where we had to try and argue about stuff that people didn't care about and they couldn't understand it. No, that's why climate debate got nowhere in 30 years. But this energy debate, we can really get somewhere if we play all our best cards right.
Yeah. Well, I've registered the name Young Voices of Australia, and also bought the domain www.youngvoices.com.au. So the idea is to have this website where young people can start to put their voices into it, like the two kids from Cedric Creed, you know, who put in the application or the submission to that green superpower transition, a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old, saying how disgraceful it was. They're putting a solar farm on 9,000 acres beside their beef property. You know, this is just disgraceful. So we want the young kids to start speaking out, you know, because it's their future. It's not us old blokes, it's their future.
Just on that note, Bill, I think to reach out to people and young people, I like to let people know, are they aware that, say, take Queensland, we have 64% that are state forests, only 5% protected. Therefore, all our forests are now, and they're pastoral leases, but they're up for grabs. We're going to lose a huge amount of land, a huge amount of natural assets, as well as timber, as well as everything. Our highest biodiversity. And reaching out to young people, how do they feel about nature? Do they think that renewable energy is going to save them if it destroys nature? Maybe asking them questions. And that's where, I think that's where we're going as well.
Yeah, that's our trump card.
Yeah, well, I asked my granddaughter, she's 13, and their response to me was, don't lecture me.
That's why you've got to get the young people to talk to other young people.
That's right.
That's what I said. They don't take any notice of us.
Yeah.
But we can find some who do. We can find some who do take notice, and they'll be the ones that take the message wider.
Well, that's right. We've got to find those young leaders. That's the thing, because we've got no old ones, that's for sure.
If you're looking...
I'm not that old, Bill.
Be good to look at universities as well, of who is employing and the climate influences that are funded by these giant corporations. Looking to all those universities are actually doing a lot of damage.
Looking at universities will make you sick, actually. The other thing that will make you sick is to see the number of Commonwealth government agencies and quasi-authorities that have been set up to promote all of this rubbish. That's another story. Anyway, it's approaching my bedtime because I'm
okay then. We've gone over an hour, so we'll just wrap it up here. But if I could just go around Bill, Raph, and then finish with Caroline to just finish it with your final wrap up.
You're first come off the rank, Raph.
Yeah, well, I've said enough tonight. The wind won't work. It wrecks the country and it's terribly expensive. And we have to get to the young people and the genuine conservationists to get really actively involved. Full stop.
Well, yeah, from my side, it's about energy security. And as Rafe said before, you know, as they close down the coal-fired power stations, they start load shedding. And load shedding is you close down businesses so that they're not using electricity. So if you've got a business, what are you going to do? You're going to say, well, there's no point in staying open in Australia. So we close our businesses down. Once we close our businesses down, people are unemployed. They go on to the dole, the budget, the whole thing is just, as I said, a house of cards. We've got to keep our coal-fired power stations open and then move to nuclear energy and gas. We want energy sovereignty, energy security for Australia, and not give our energy generation to a foreign power who wants to do us harm.
Okay, Caroline?
Oh, well, I'd like to finish off. I'd like to put nature on the map. And I'd like to just state that nature is important. They're our natural assets. They are an asset. And like we're looking at a $6 billion bee industry, we're looking at our climate, our microclimates, our biodiversity, and the places that we love. So what's happening now, we're losing access. And we're talking about Cairns region, the Tablelanders, where people, we get millions of people every year coming to our region. And now we're losing access points. So where people would normally go camping on the rivers, they can no longer go there. But for us, it's about nature, biodiversity. We believe we would like to open up all conversations about all energy objectively, and we would like to put nuclear on the map, but nature and for nature. Yeah.
Thank you. Bill and Caroline, I sent you that email about the forum tomorrow night. So if you look in your email boxes, the information's there about how you register. Okay?
Thanks very much, Bill. Thank you.
I suppose the other thing is, Caroline, I suppose this is only just the start of it. I mean, we've only got probably 1 or 2% penetration of the projects that are actually operating at the moment. And so what another 99% of the same thing is going to look like in the coming years is going to be something to behold and be very frightened of, I think. But if I could just encourage everyone to sort of get in contact with each other, and then also pass information to other groups. I've got a couple of groups I'll pass information to that have both come on the show and I've had contact with in the different communities. So I think that's the main thing in regards to Bill's situation is we probably need to funnel as many people towards Bill in regards to letting them know that resource is there for them to use and to be part of.
Thanks very much. Bill? Okay,
people, thanks very much for tonight's show. And Raph, you can go and put your head down. I know it's an hour later.
Poor old fella.
Well, he's in New South Wales and it's already gone 9:30 down there, so it's well past his bedtime. So that's the problem when the sun comes up an hour early in New South Wales.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, then, people. Thanks very much for the show. I'll just wind it up now and just let people know about next week's show. If you enjoyed tonight's show, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook page, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next week, we'll be back with a wind-up show on things that happen throughout the year. And so join us again. Thanks very much.